This simple opening has made me an international master. It starts with the move d6. I play it against absolutely everything, no matter what my opponent is doing. For 10 years now, I have beat the world number 13 Linear Dominguez Super Grandmaster with this exact opening. I played it against Hikaru Nakamura and got in a very good position, and he only tricked me in the very end in the deep endgame. So it starts with the move d6, then I played the move e5, and I want to fight for the center. If they ever take me, I am always fine with it. By the way, we are going for it. It's my favorite line because with a big probability we are going to achieve the endgame here, which is absolutely incredible for black. In fact, even the engine says it's at least equal, but practically speaking, it's much simpler to play as black because you get so much experience with it if you play it every single time, and your opponent just makes random moves. He doesn't have any idea what to do here. Nothing fancy that you need to remember. Place your bishop on a6, attack the pawn on c4. We bring all of our pieces into the game. We bring this knight all the way to c5, where it's generally very, very good. To make it possible, we start with the move knight to d7. Don't place it on c6, because the pawn goes to c6 and our king goes to c7. This pawn is the most important thing in the universal defense that you need to remember, because it controls those squares so that the knight cannot go forward. And then your king would be happy on c7, get rid of this file where your opponent's rook stands. That's not great. Look, this bishop on d2 feels very weird here. It's closed and it's not clear what kind of a plan he's gonna play. And against this knight on f3, you can do exactly the same thing. You can just play the move f6, and this pawn controls all of the squares the knight can go. So you don't have any danger to deal with. And then you just want to bring all of your pieces into the game, the bishop and the knight. Very useful move that I also want to point out is a5, because we want to use this c5 square for our knight, and we don't want this b4 move to happen from our opponent. That is why we play a5, and now knight to c5, for example, we can just play it right now immediately. Is possible, no b4 is an option. Then, of course, it's important to bring all of our pieces over here. Of course, our opponent would try to create some counterplay. He has to do that, otherwise that would be too simple for us. But it's very difficult because we pretty much don't have any weaknesses at all. We have a choice. We can play knight h6 and then remaneuver to f7, which is very interesting. By the way, let's just do it, why not? And knight to e7 is also completely possible, knight g6 to follow, or maybe even knight c8, knight d6, knight b6, ideas like that. But the knight on f7 is very good. It's covering a lot of squares. It can come to d6 to attack the pawn, to fight for this e4 square. Okay, our opponent finally tries to be more active, but notice that he lost some time on this e4, e3, e4 moves, and we continue our plan with knights to f7. Now bishop to e7 and rook h to d8, of course, are more than possible, and in fact, I don't see anything stopping me from doing that. Let's see what our opponent does. Knight to h4. Yes, of course, you always think what kind of ideas your opponent has. For example, here he plays knight h4, he wants to get to f5, and you ask yourself a question. Is it a problem for me or not? I don't want my opponent's knight to be there, so I simply stop it with the move g6. Now, the d file is the only one, and when you think where to put your rooks, you always want to put it to the open file, so that's exactly what I do. You see that this opening is literally incredibly simple. You don't make any fancy things here. You just develop your pieces normally, and you get a fantastic position. Your bishop is attacking this pawn. You don't really have any problems. All right, the question is, though, how do we make progress? How do we create some problems for our opponent, because that's essentially how you win in chess. We can exchange all of the rooks, of course, or maybe try to exchange the bishops, because our bishop on e7 is actually not that great. So what I'm thinking is to play knight e6 and bishop to c5. Let's do that. We want to play on the dark squares. This is just one of the ideas. There are multiple. In fact, I notice a problem now. Again, remember, I don't make perfect moves, of course. I blundered here that he can play knight to a4. Hopefully I can still deal with it, but it feels annoying. My knight on c5 was controlling everything. After knight a4, he's creating bishop b6 idea, and I cannot play bishop c5, which was my intention. Okay, he's actually not doing that, but that, I think, helps me a lot. I can just take it on f4. It's actually never a problem. He created an isolated pawn for himself. And also once he takes, I don't know, this g5 is always a problem. I can't even just play knight e5, but then maybe his idea is to take and attack my pawn on e5, which is not super protected. Maybe just bishop d6. Actually, bishop d6 feels very good. Because remember, I wanted to exchange those bishops anyway, and remember this square on e5, it's almost always a beautiful square for our knight to go. And this knight, yeah, maybe knight e6 just wasn't a good idea. It was having a good spot, so just leave it there. Knight to g2. Okay, he wants to get to f4. But this time I think I'm perfectly fine with knight to e5, because if he takes, first of all, his knight is far from the ideal spot on f3 to attack the e5 square, and secondly, I can take it with the bishop instead of the pawn, which is also great, because my bishop is so powerful controlling all of those squares. I don't see any problems. And I'm gonna have a pair of bishops advantage, which I love so much. Let's see. No, he doesn't take it yet, which is fine. I even have like alternatives. I can play knight to b4 check if I need to, but doesn't seem to get me anything. Let's correct my mistake and bring this knight back to c5. Yes, I believe we are already overtaking the initiative, because our opponent has some weaknesses that we don't have. Yet the position is obviously not completely winning. Our opponent is very strong, so he is doing his best. I think I want just to take it, or maybe play f5. This is the advantage of playing on chestnut Evo board, that you are not obliged to take the pawn even if you touched it. But actually, that's the same in online chess. So the reason I'm thinking is because there is also this move f5. But actually, remember, always think about your opponent's ideas. If I play f5, he has rook takes d6, sacrificing the rook, because if I take it back, he plays bishop takes, e5. And if I take it with the king, then rook d1 check, and then he still takes it. So that's quite serious. That's not what you can ignore. And if you take on g5 and he does the same, then I have to take his bishop, and that, yeah, that's still fine. So I'm gonna do that. Somehow my opponent plays very, very fast. He has much more time than he had in the very beginning. Not sure what's the reason for that, but I'm very satisfied with my position, as long as I don't blunder here. Okay, he does go for that. That's why it's very important that I didn't play f5 and took on g5 instead, creating a counter threat. Now his rook is hanging. Yes, so I believe the material is equal. Now after he plays knight takes f4, but the position is much better for me. Like, look at this knight on e5, it's just a monster. In fact, I want to play rook to f8, attack that guy, and provoke this exchange, because this bishop is horrible. It's like all of his pieces are on the light squares, and so the bishop has little stuff to do. And all of my pieces are active. This is a dream. Yeah, that's a little bit annoying that he can create some checks now, winning my rook. So very important not to blunder that. I think I can just bring my king closer to the center. By the way, remember, the king is very important in the endgame. Try to make it as active as possible. In the very beginning, our king was already in the center, and a lot of people are afraid of it. But actually, it's not a big deal. In the endgame, like, without the queens on the board, you're not afraid anymore. You might be wondering, what is this magic board I use in my videos? It's called Chessnut Evo, and I enjoy it so much. I have it for a year now. It completely transformed the way I play chess and I train chess, because I can play both on Chess and chess.com online, but on a real board. It's a completely different experience and I enjoy it a lot. I haven't had any major issues, and that's my favorite product from Chestnut, because I have everything in one place. I have my books here, I have my studies here, I have my games, but they have so many different products according to your needs and your budget. The best part is, of course, you can use the link in the description as well as the promo code journeytograndmaster to get a big discount on all Chestnut products. Now, back to video. I think it's time for me to create a threat for my opponent and play the move g5, provoke him to take here on e6 and get to that endgame that I wanted to get. Let's see what he does. I just want to exchange the rooks, basically. Also, if he just goes away, this h3 pawn would be hanging, so I believe he must take on e6. The alternative was just to step back with the bishop and then play g5. Yes, he's playing that first, but I guess I'm pretty fine with my king in the center. And okay, he doesn't want to exchange the rooks, but actually now my rook would be able to get to f2, where it's going to be extremely active. Let me think if I want... Yes, I want to take with the knight, because he's already preparing that b4 idea, so I step back. And from here, the knight can come to f4, to d4 in some variations. Let's take, not to blunder anything. Always and always, whenever your opponent makes a move, try to understand what's the idea behind that. Maybe he created a threat. And if not, then try to make a very active move of your own, creating some threats. For example, knight c4 is a problem, but at the same time, I improved my my rook so much. So it's so-called multi-purpose move, when you do something useful for yourself and create a problem for your opponent at the same time. Now I have so many ideas in mind. Again, don't blunder a check, but my king is on the dark squares, which means this bishop can never give it a check, which means I cannot lose it, and I like the move rook h2. Let me calculate the variations. Probably he wants to play bishop to f1. Maybe instead of that, I rather want to improve my pieces, because when you attack, you want to connect as many pieces to the attack as possible. And it's better that I attack now both with the knight and with the rook, rather than just with the rook, in case of rook h2. In the endgame, the importance of passers is extremely high, so I want to create a passer for myself and then push it forward. That's my plan. And I don't think he can stop me. Please notice how powerful this pawn on c6. Even deep into the endgame, it still limits that knight on c3. And they don't get the problem with this knight. Like, the majority of your opponents would not understand it. It would stay there the whole game. They would think it's good, but actually it has zero moves, zero opportunities. And basically I win this game thanks to the fact that this knight is so bad. Just take the pawn. And now even g4, g3, g2 is a very powerful idea, which seems to be unstoppable. At some point they realize, okay, the knight is very stupid, and try to relocate it like knight d1 or something, but it's too late and also not very active. Okay, probably I want just to exchange the rooks like I wanted in the beginning. And now I have two connected passers that I should use to my advantage. To do that, I play knight to f4, attacking the bishop. The bishop has to go, and then h5. Ideally, you should not just use one of your pawns, but so that they go together. Bishop d1. I'm not sure if knight c4 is needed, because somehow it pushes my opponent's king backwards, but on the other hand, my knight in the center, I'm controlling everything, so I think I rather want just to go forward with my pawns. Remember, it's not enough just to get those passers. You have to push it forward to actually take advantage of it. That's what I'm doing. Finally, he recognizes that this knight is bad, but I'm afraid it's way too late, because now I have an extra pawn and I push it forward. My knight absolutely dominates over this bishop. It has 0 squares to go forward. Okay, maybe h3 is winning. How do you even stop? Maybe after h3 he wants to play knight to f3. This is a good time to think, not to spoil my advantage. Maybe the best thing, and most of the players forget about it, is to activate your king. The king the king's activity is one of the biggest, most important factors in terms of your endgame success and overall success in chess. Yes, when the queens are on the board, you try to hide your king, don't go into the center, it might get into trouble. But once the queens are off the board, and as more and more pieces are going off the board, the importance of the king rises, and at this point it's essential to use it to your advantage. All right, how do I actually make progress? Maybe g4 was the right move instead of king f6, just to make sure that I get those pawns, because now my knight is hanging there. How do I go from here? Maybe I just play knight e6, and then next move would be g4 anyway. Again, this knight on e5 is just controlling, and it's a perfect position for it because, first of all, it's in the center, it's controlling all of those squares, but second, it's blocking this passer, and this pawn is isolated, so the knight cannot be kicked away. Finally, I make this move g4. Remember, we want to push our pawns forward. Yeah, he plays b5, but nobody cares. That pawn is even protected, and I guess it's time to push our pawn. Like, yes, it's important not to get stuck with our pawns so that he cannot block it, but here, like, h2 is an unstoppable threat. Don't even see a single move he can make. Because this knight, remember, it was stupid the whole game. He pushed it to g1, but it's still a very passive piece. And our opponent struggles here to understand what to do. He finally resigned. So here is exactly how you beat everyone under 2000 and even above that with this simple universal defense for black. Here you have an entire playlist to learn even more about this beautiful opening and forget about opening pain once and for all.